Hi, I'm Mike Bellevue, and today we're going to be reloading for the 30 caliber M1 carbine round. So let's get to it. The 30 caliber M1 carbine round is easy to reload, and it's fun, and it makes for economical shooting. So I'm going to show you the steps that I go through to load mine. The first thing that I do is what I call the preliminary resize. I'm going to resize this twice because basically of the equipment I'm using. But the first resize is so I can measure it for trim length. And trim length is very important in the M1 carbine. You might not think so because it looks like a straight-walled pistol case and those don't need retrimming very often. But actually it's got a taper to it, and it does do some stretching. And trim length is critical to the proper functioning of the M1 carbine itself. So we want a case length no shorter than 1.280 inches and no longer than 1.290 inches. So I'm going to trim these to 1.285 inches. And I'll show you the reason why it's important to resize them before you measure them and trim them. So let's get this set up. I use a Lee turret press. And for this step, I am not going to be putting the indexing rod, which is this helix bar. That's what causes the turret to index automatically, and I don't want to use that because I'm going to use it essentially like a single stage press to do a bunch of resizing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the priming, the auto priming arm, and that'll make my spent primers drop down into the reservoir. And then I'm going to take the turret that I have my M1 carbine dies loaded on, and I'm going to put it in, and I am going to index it around to the resizing die. And then I'll put on the M1 carbine shell holder, and we'll be good to go. So now this is not going to auto index. I can just keep running rounds up into the resizing die. So here's why you need to resize them before you trim them. You remember I told you that the trim length on this is from a minimum of 1.280 to 1.290. So here's a fired case, and we'll just measure this. Alright, so we're getting 1.215 off of this. So if I ran this into my trimmer set for 1.285, it wouldn't cut anything off of it because it thinks that it's shorter than the spec I've set it up to. So now let's run it through the resizing die and measure it again. But we just run it right up, fully resize it, and now I'm going to pull this out and we'll measure it again. And you can see we're now 1.2975, so that is 0.75 over the maximum case length spec. And we need to get that trimmed down. So I'm going to do this for a batch of them, and then we'll go into trimming. After I resize them, of course I measure them, and anything that is less than 1.287, I don't bother trimming. If it's over 1.287, like this one is 1.2905, definitely oversized, then it goes to the trimmer. And if you've seen my earlier reloading videos, you know that this setup is my Harry Potter bench. I call it that because it's under the stairs in my basement. So in order to get the most use out of my small bench, I use a Lee bench plate. So I am going to be removing this press. There we go. And in its place, I'm going to be swinging in a Lee zip trim. So I'll get that screwed down tight, and then we'll do some trimming. But we're going to be using this zip trim with the Lee trimming fixture. And this is set so that you can't go any deeper than the distance that this piece is made for. And for the M1 carbine, they make it for 1.285, which is perfect. And it fits inside the shell, and these cutter teeth will cut it down to size. And we hold it still by putting it here in the zip trim. And I've got the 3-jaw adjustable collet on here. I'm going to tighten that down. And once that's good and tight, we put this baby in here. And then give it a trim. There we go. And I don't know if it shows up on here, but you can see the little brass shavings where it's cut off. And then to finish it off, we'll use a little chamfer tool. And then we got a nice clean round. So then we can just unscrew it, release the chuck, and there we go. So I'm going to measure this. And now we're right within spec. Whoops. Let's see if we can show that. There we go. So that's how we're going to trim the rest of these cases. And once they're all trimmed up, we'll be ready to reload. Okay, now that we've got everything trimmed up to length, we're going to put the turret press back together. Now this time we're going to use the indexing helix, and that goes right in here. And that's what's going to spin that baby around. So, get the turret back on. And there we are. So we'll make sure we're indexing okay. As you can see, each time I go, it goes to another station. So, I'm going to put the primer arm back in, the shell holder. And now we're going to put the priming tray. This is the Lee Safety Prime system. And it swings right up over here and just moves with finger pressure onto the rounds. So we are pretty much good to go. Now all we need to do is put some powder in it and we're ready to run. I already have this loaded up with Federal small rifle primers. And the powder we're going to be using is Hodgdon's H110. I used to use a lot of Alliance 2400, but since they've reformulated it, it hits its pressure peak kind of early, and I don't think it's as good for M1 carbines as the H110. So I'm going to load this up. This measure is a Lee Pro Auto Disc measure, but I don't use the discs. And in fact, I'll just show you. In my 9mm Makarov die set, you can see that this actually uses a disc system, and each of these holes allows a certain amount of powder to drop through, and you pick the hole that is right for the charge you want. And that system works out pretty well, but I prefer, let me just get this back in. But I prefer replacing those discs with this micrometer adjustable charge bar, and this allows me to move this dial and set the opening to whatever size I want. I can make it bigger or I can make it smaller, and I can get exactly the powder charge that I want. And because it has a scale on here, it's repeatable, so I can do different powders and set them. And I pretty much have that on all of my die sets. So we got the powder in, we got some shells, we got primers, and the last piece of the puzzle are bullets. These are Sierra Pro Hunter 110 grain full metal jacketed 308 caliber bullets. So as you can see, full metal jacketed with a lead core, and that's what we're going to be loading. So, using the Lee turret press, here's the procedure. I'm going to get it around to the resizing die, put a shell in, run it up through the sizer again, and the reason I'm doing that is because it's there. and it makes it easy to prime right on the machine. So I use the primer. On the downstroke, it's going to prime that shell. On the upstroke, it's going to pick up a powder charge. And let's see if we can get in there and show you. I don't know if we can get inside. Yeah, I think you might be able to see that. So we've picked up a powder charge. And on the downstroke, it goes to the seating die. So I put a bullet on, run it up into the seating die, and the last stage then is to crimp it. And we pull it out, and we've got a good solid 30 caliber M1 carbine round ready to go. And now we're all ready to shoot. So we just got to do that a whole bunch more times, and then we can head to the range.